This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Gosh, it's good to be back after a week out of the Real Talk studio. Jesperson here with our intrepid producer, John Hicks.
We'll see if we can't still do this. It's like riding a bike, right?
You think we can still pull it off? You're not supposed to say stupid things like I'm about to say at the outset of a podcast or on the first tee box at a golf course. You never say things like, well, it's going great so far.
I walked in today. I was like, are the cameras going to turn on? Do the lights work?
Everything
it's been a week.
Still worked. All the plants are still alive. It's amazing. It's good to see you again. We made a promise to each other that as best we could, though we have a famous friendship and a healthy working relationship, we try to stay out of each other's hair on our days off. We didn't really correspond at all.
Yeah,
no,
I was surprised.
I don't even know what you were up to.
I was like,
except for your Johnny Infamous Instagram. I know that you were DJing like 15 weddings.
Yeah, I did a bunch.
For Team Canada.
Yeah, so...
Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yeah, well, Genevieve and Emirates, two of the goalies from Team Canada, the women's team, tied the knot. It was an incredible event out at a private property. I won't say where because it was kind of... Yeah. But, and now I can talk about it because there's video up, but a ton of amazing athletes out there, including the best Canadian women's hockey player potentially in the world. Marie-Philippe Poulin was there. Sarah Nurse. It was absolutely incredible event. It was amazing.
A lot of fun. We were down at the Calgary Stampede.
Took
the little ones down there just this past weekend. We got caught in that epic hailstorm. I'm not sure.
How was that?
Well, it was wild. It was like we were flooded up past our ankles on the Stampede grounds, and of course, you never know. Like around big. I'm not saying that there's not supervision when they're setting up those big rides. I'm sure there is. But when the wind really starts to blow, I wonder, how much longer will the zipper stand? And so we were trying to find shelter along with 150,000 other people. But another hugely successful, greatest outdoor show on earth down in Calgary. And in just a second, so much fun. Yeah. And even that is, I was saying to our little guy, I'm trying to tell him as he's like wide-eyed and watching Mother Nature
first time, right? You're explaining everything.
I'm saying this will all be a wonderful story 24 hours from now. And so I'm trying to remind him that. Yeah. We've got the federal environment minister joining us in the House in just a quick second. Ask Randy Boissonnault. He was down flipping pancakes and rubbing shoulders, flipping pancakes and rubbing shoulders with she who would be perceived to be his political enemy. I can't wait to ask Randy Boissonnault about flipping pancakes with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Plus, of course, Charles Adler is going to join us today. We got a lot to catch up on. Straight Pride t-shirts. I mean, a million other things as well. But first, I wanted to let you know it's obviously not news to anybody. And Randy, minister is also the Associate Minister of Finance. So we'll talk some dollars and cents with him today. Cost of living. It's not news to anybody that the cost of living has gone totally crazy right now. But you know what goes hand in hand with that? The cost of doing business has gone up as well. If you need to boost your revenue, one of the best things that you can do is to create a standout training program. We Know Training is your best training partner for creating courses and programs that sell. They've helped associations, regulators, nonprofits, and more generate millions of dollars in revenue without any extra work for their teams. That's big, obviously, in creating, managing, and selling those training courses. If you want to learn more, visit weknowtraining.ca today and see what they could do for your business. Randy Boissonnault is the MP for Edmonton Centre. He's one of a handful of elected members of Parliament out of the province of Alberta. He also sits in cabinet. He's the federal government's Minister of Tourism. And, of course, he's the Associate Minister of Finance as well. He's always made himself available to this show, and we're grateful to have you in studio. Thanks for making time for us. Yeah, how was your Calgary Stampede? I'll show everybody here. I had it called up here on my Twitter, this photo, because I thought this is a heck of a photo. And I know, and don't give the politician answer.
Sure.
Give the when it's you and Danielle Smith and Jody Gondek flipping pancakes side by side by side. There's some political tension on three fronts there, isn't there?
Well, you got all orders of government there.
Yeah.
You got different political parties there. And what are we doing? exactly what the residents of Calgary and Edmonton want us to do, which is get along and get stuff done.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
In this particular case, we got the griddle removed of all pancakes fast. And look, it was first flip Thursday, 5,000 people showing up. It turned out to be the second best Stampede in the history of the Stampede over 100 and some years. And you know what? 6% of Alberta's tourism revenues come from that one event.
What? 6% of the annual revenues come from the Calgary
whole
Stampede.
$550 million.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. They set a record on day one, 176,000 people through the gates, which is wild.
Yeah.
If you think about it, I was saying to my little guy, I said that's 10 times the number of people that would show up for an NHL hockey game, maybe more than 10 times down in Calgary. But no cheap shots right now. I grew up cheering for that team, so no cheap shots. But it really is. It can't be understated how significant it is. What we know that every politician's got to be seen at the Calgary Stampede. How much actual work gets done? You're actually talking policy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of work. There's policy. There's coordination. Look, I had 4 of my colleagues. I had to go to Vancouver to do an LNG conference and some tourism stuff. But on the Tuesday, I had 4 federal ministers in, meeting with businesses, stakeholders from all over Calgary, all over Alberta. It was the best Edmonton party that I'd ever seen us throw Thursday night. And people left, went to other Calgary parties, came back to the Edmonton party, let me say.
Good.
And the premier showed up. Like the Mayor Sohi was there. We had 500 people in a ballroom. Got some rain to kick things off. Yeah. Forced everybody into the ballroom. And best Edmonton showing at a Stampede ever. I was hanging out with Bill Nelson. Who's Bill Nelson? Senator Nelson is now the administrator of NASA. And he was there because we had Jeremy, our Canadian astronaut, who's going to go to do the moon shot. Literally, he was the parade marshal. And so it was a perfect opportunity to build the bridge between NASA and Canada. And I can tell you, Senator Nelson had a heck of a time at Stampede. And his next thing is to come back and go to Banff.
So what's the conversation? And by the way, people really, they take close looks at how you flip the pancakes. People read a lot into like your personality, your competence on the job by flipping pancakes. Like it's actually really a thing, right? It's the same as the handshake. Like if you have a lousy handshake, people read a lot into it. Yeah. Same with the pancake flip. Did you feel some pressure?
I felt some pressure. I needed a little practice off the start. I think I offered a few pancakes to the pancake gods, but then I did 4 in a row, and one of the counselors, Councillor Shabbat, caught all 4 of them. So I think I'm good for 2023 pancake
I think
competence.
Your team threw that on your Instagram to prove your pancake. So what do you? What's the scuttlebutt like? Because we'll in a second we'll talk about Alberta's premier and her comments about your colleague, the federal environment minister, Stephen Guilbeault's plan.
Who's here this week, right?
He's going to be joining me on Wednesday. Yeah. Kind of this road to net zero, and Alberta's premier is asserting basically the plan, the federal government's plan, is really damaging for Alberta. She says it's kind of out of tune with what global demand looks like, projected demand for oil and gas. So what does that conversation look like? I mean, obviously, while the cameras are rolling and you're flipping pancakes, nobody's really getting into it. But did you have meaningful conversation with Premier Smith?
Look, I talked to the premier before we went up and did the pancake stuff, and it's all about common ground and sitting down. She's met with Jonathan Wilkins. She's met with Dominic LeBlanc, our intergovernmental affairs and infrastructure minister. She and I have had chats about this. I know Minister Jean and Minister Wilkinson, the energy ministers, have met. It's all about emissions. Okay, we got to decouple production levels from emissions. So the faster and better that our oil companies can get at stripping out emissions from production, the more they're going to be able to produce. So when you're talking about a carbon capture, use and storage technology, which we've put billions of dollars into, that's going to help Pathways Alliance. What's Pathways Alliance? 6 of the largest oil and gas producers came together to say, look, we got to get to net zero. We're seeing where financial markets are going. We're seeing that the fact that the world is changing. And I know that right here in Alberta, we can have the greenest barrel of oil on the planet. And that's the first one that people are going to want to buy. Now, since the war in Russia, our production levels are up and our emissions are down. And so that's telling me that we actually are on the right track, and we're going to continue to make sure that we're on that path to net zero. But let me be clear, there's no pathway to net zero for Canada that doesn't run through Alberta and that doesn't run through Pathways Alliance. And that's why if you build on sustainable jobs, to make sure that we're working with the actual workers in the sector, to make sure that they have long-term careers in this sector, and make sure that when we're talking about production levels separated from emissions, then we have a future that everybody can talk about. And look, is it the Premier's job to keep the heat on us? Absolutely. Are we going to keep those conversations going? Yes. And I look forward to Alberta joining the regional energy table that Jonathan Wilkinson is setting up, because they're in every jurisdiction of the country now, except for Alberta and Saskatchewan. So the faster we get that work done, the faster we can have a plan that's going to work for everybody.
We'll get to, and again, we're going to be talking about this week, and so make sure Real Talk audience members that you catch on it in particular on Wednesday's episode. But here's what the Premier had to say about about the federal minister Guilbeault's plan, and she said not only are the contemplated federal targets unconstitutional, which is that's a big. I want to get your comment on that. Unconstitutional. She says they create investor uncertainty and are extremely harmful to the Alberta and Canadian economies. Obviously, we're going to be getting conservative voices on this too, but the assertion that it's unconstitutional, this comes back, I think, obviously to the ideas around the province's sovereignty and this type of thing. But you've got a sort of a, how do I describe the look on your face? How do you describe the look on your face right now?
We can fact check. I mean, you can fact check my tweets too. But that statement is false. Like, we fought an election over this. And we went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was very clear that the federal government's competence in terms of environmental jurisdiction allows us to set targets. So, check mark, that's done. So it's not unconstitutional. It's a shared jurisdiction, which is why we should be at the table together. We shouldn't be rattling sabers in public. We should be sitting down, figuring out what the actual numbers are and how much time is it going to take us to get there. Net zero, Pathways, was ahead of the federal government when it came to its own targets for net zero. And when it comes to actually, is it harmful to our environment? Absolutely. No. Is it harmful to workers? No, because there's $100 trillion on the table to get to a net zero future between now and 2050. I want Alberta to get its fair share. So showing that we can do CCUS stacks, that we can bring hydrogen on board, that we can actually position this sector for more production with fewer emissions, that's the way forward. And I know they can do it.
How important is it? And by the way, we sort of have like a no BS promise to our audience members here, so I'll let people are going to hear Pathways Alliance advertising on this show. So just say we're launching a partnership with them today. That's a fact. So take that for what it's worth. Let me ask you, though, I mean, how important is it to have a group or have an organization like Pathways Alliance in play here, industry players leading this as a, because you know what the scuttlebutt is. You know what people say about the federal government, and you've heard it all. Justin Trudeau hates the oil sands. The federal government hates Alberta oil. You've heard it all, right? And you've answered a lot of questions about it on this show. How important is it to have industry leaders taking a leadership role?
Okay, look, I'll give you insight. You want inside scoop too?
We all want.
Okay, so I love industry. Okay, and I love that industry's at the table. I have the numbers of all of the leaders of Pathways. If we didn't have the 6 groups together, we'd have to pull these 6 companies together. So what Cenovus is doing, Imperial, what CNRL is doing is really important. And look, for a long time, oil and gas companies didn't seek to tell people how innovative this sector is. Everybody thinks the most innovative sector in this country is the aerospace. I'd say maybe no, it's not that. It's automotive. No. You want to talk about the BS filter? The most innovative sector in this country is the oil and gas sector. Like, we figured out how to get oil out of sand. We figured out how to drill in the middle of winter. And so why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if Pathways didn't exist, we'd have to exist it, and we'd have to create it. And look, at one point at the Edmonton party, I heard the Premier's voice, and all of a sudden I find myself getting a hug. I'm like, Premier, nice to see you too. She goes, I love your shirt. I didn't know. And I said, what didn't you know? And the back of my shirt, which is an Interpipeline shirt, says, I love pipelines. I said, well, Premier, I've always loved pipelines since day one. I ran on Keystone. I ran on Energy East. And when TMX is done, is it costing us more than we thought? Absolutely. Is it going to get built? Yeah. All you have to do is go to Jasper and see that pipe being built. When that thing is done next year, we get our world price of oil for the first time. The Americans no longer give us a haircut. And I'm going to be celebrating that day.
Would you wear your I Love Pipelines shirt in Montreal at a party?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I've worn it in Ottawa. I'll have to bring it to Montreal.
Well, tag me in a tweet when you're wearing it in Montreal, and I'll retweet it. You have my word on that.
Deal.
Our conversation is going to bounce all over the map. These are my favorite kinds of conversations, but you're talking about stampedes and T-shirts. So, like, I got to ask you about this guy. This is, I'm going to play the audio a little bit later.
Sure.
An independent journalist actually got an interview with this guy, and I'll put that in front of Charles Adler. But everyone's seen the photos by now. So there he is, the leader of the official opposition, wants to be Canada's next prime minister. That's Pierre Poilievre posing with this guy. And, of course, Alberta's premier as well, Danielle Smith, posing with this guy. The shirt says, basically, thank a straight person for your existence, straight pride on the back. I think the quote is Martin Luther King Jr. quote, actually. It wasn't something like, you got to break bad laws or something like that. I know I should know it. But I didn't spend too much time losing sleep over this shirt, but I also have a lot of privilege and I'm straight. So probably, like for me, I'll be honest, when I see a shirt like this, I don't say this usually to federal ministers, but a friend of mine, she says, what's your take on the shirt? I said, it's small dick energy. That's what that shirt is. It's just sad. It's just pathetic. I don't necessarily, but again, I'm straight. Okay. Yeah. So I'm straight, But she says, do you think it's hateful? I said, I don't know if it's hateful. It just, to me, seems just a little pathetic. It's like, we have the Black Entertainment Awards. Where's the White Entertainment Awards? We have the Pride Parades. Where's the Straight Parade? Like all this, this kind of stuff, right? It's, so I look at that and I guess in a way, I just kind of shake my head and write it off as a little bit pathetic. But it was politically problematic for the Premier, politically problematic for Pierre Poilievre. You have served as the Prime Minister's special advisor on LGBTQ2S plus issues. You are an open and proud gay man. How do you take that shirt?
So look, the shirt is more than unfortunate. It's a dumb shirt. The majority has the power, right? And the majority of the country is straight. And the majority of the country is still white. And so this person is not only straight and white, they're rubbing it in the face of people who have just been trying to fight for basic oxygen. That's it. That's why it really is, it's really somebody who's overcompensating. I don't know for what. But what's problematic for the Premier and Poilievre is they should know better. Like, if all you're doing is playing to your base, then you really can't say to minority populations that I have your back at the same time. You can't suck and blow at the same time on this one. And quite frankly, it's a real problem because you've got Poilievre with openly gay members of his caucus. How do they take this? Are they welcome in caucus? Do they get to speak their minds? Like we have two of the Conservatives, and we have a couple of New Democrats, and there's me and Seamus and Pascal and Rob all created the Canadian Pride Caucus with a bunch of senators. Well, how's our next meeting going to go? Like, have they tweeted out anything about this? No, and they're not allowed to. So are they really able to stick up for the backs of LGBTQ2 Canadians? And in a normal year, at a normal time, people might just write off the shirt, but not when people are in New Brunswick, not being able to express who they are at school without them calling, their parents. Like here in Alberta, it was former Finance Minister Taves who passed a law that if you join the Gay Straight Alliance, somebody's got to call your parents. Well, what the hell's the point? Nobody calls your parents when you join the chess club or the basketball club or the social club or, quite frankly, even the drama team. But if you're going to join a Gay Straight Alliance, somebody's got to call your parents. Well, then all the Gay Straight Alliances just folded because there's no point in having them. So it's about making sure that we stick up for people's rights, all people's rights, and political leaders. Like I have this saying, you can be my ally, and you're a great ally, but I also know that you've made it to the champion leagues. What do I mean by that? You're my ally when you tell me you have my back when I'm in the room. But I know you're my champion when you have my back when I'm not in the room. Neither of these leaders were our champions in those moments.
If people want to dig a little bit deeper into what Minister was just talking about in New Brunswick, we talked to Philippe Fournier from 338 Canada, not last week, we were off last week, but if you look back in our most recent episodes, he talks about Premier Higgs polling in his home province and the impact that that's had on that. If you want to go back, you can find it on YouTube or, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. Both leaders, Smith and Poilievre, said, we didn't read the shirts. And you're chuckling.
Where's
for people
your BS
listening
meter?
On the podcast.
Like, there should be an actual BS meter that goes off behind your head.
So I'm not like. Let me say this. Like, so this is how I would answer that: is number one, bullshit. But number two, like, it is, and I've seen it, and you've seen it, you've experienced it. Obviously, to be the premier or the mayor or the prime minister or the deputy, whatever, to be in a senior political, as a recognizable person at an event like the Calgary Stampede, you are pivot here photo, pivot here photo, pivot here photo. That is true. That is true. So for a second, I could maybe say, well, maybe they didn't kind of see the fluorescent green shirt with like the huge, maybe. But then in that circumstance, and I know it's not popular to pile on staffers, and I know that people don't typically enjoy when broadcasters start asking questions like this, but like, where was the political support? Where was the team? And so that leads me to believe, I find it very hard to believe that a premier or a wannabe prime minister's team of handlers didn't see the shirt. And to me, the availability for the photograph was calculated, which then doesn't make sense that you walk it back. Like, either let the photo happen and own it, and maybe just don't comment on it. I know that, like, can I also say, this is why people listen to Real Talk, because this is like, I'm having this conversation with a person who is gay.
Yeah.
So, like, this is a very real conversation to
Real
have,
talk.
because this is going to land with you a whole lot different than it's going to land with me. I'm just looking at it from, like, political strategy.
And I'll get hate comments over it.
Talking about this?
You better believe it. Look at the comments. Look at the we tweet about this show. Half the comments will be, why the hell are you talking about straight pride t-shirts? What right do you have to talk about that? And look, I get 364 days to celebrate all my straight friends. I get 1 day where I get to be myself. And for all those people from rural Alberta, for who are now looking at the Premier and going, does she have my back? The only place they can go is to a Pride place, is to a Pride event. And maybe August 25th is the only day that they can hold their partner's hand or actually, have a kiss when somebody's not going to judge them. And what's the gay agenda? Get the lawn done. Unpack the dishwasher. Right? Make sure that the list of chores from your partner gets done. That's what the gay agenda is. It's none of this bullshit that's on people's t-shirts. And if people want to stick up for us, then do so. But don't play games. And the day that I see LGBTQ issues no longer being political footballs is the day that I will know that our work has been accomplished. It's the same thing. Like, we're seeing this in other countries. They got past this. Like, my people are not. Like, we're not political footballs anymore. And you want to go to the streets of Edmonton right now and talk to the kids. 60% of the kids on the street right now are queer kids because their straight parents have kicked them out.
I've actually seen the numbers higher than that.
It can be as high as 70%.
Yeah,
Talk to Margot Long, right?
Margot Long at Youth
YESS.
Empowerment Support Services.
And so it's real. And look, what happens when a 14-year-old or 15-year-old kid gets kicked out? Where are they going to, they'll couch surf for a while, but then that'll get old. And then they're going to then they'll live on the streets. That's dangerous. And then maybe they get trafficked. And I can tell you the suicide and death rates we see among young people is high and real. So is the t-shirt innocuous? Probably. But the long value chain of that kind of intolerance leads to very unfortunate circumstances. And Pierre Poilievre and the Premier should know better.
During the Alberta election, I'm not going to continue to bang this drum, but there is like a trend that you can't ignore. There's a candidate obviously that was elected as an MLA in Lacombe-Pinoca that made some pretty horrific comments about trans kids in schools, and everybody knows about that. Bigger picture, like with regards to international news, Bud Light, the whole controversy around their partnership with a trans woman, a social media influencer, but one of their thousands of partnerships, one of their thousands of promotions has earned, I think, that company a loss, pretty significant loss of market share. And we were talking about Kid Rock and all the these celebrities like shooting cases of Bud Light with AR-15s, and I think it was in Edson just the other day. I know it was in Edson that they had their a Pride an art installation that was vandalized. We got an amazing email out of Edson, by the way, on Friday. Listen to our most recent Trash Talk. Someone from Edson being like, "Let me tell you what Edson's all about." It was very positive, but I know that news like that is a bit of a gut punch. It seems like from my position as an observer, it seems like there was more pushback, more controversy around Pride Month this year than in previous years. When you would think it would be becoming less of a thing, it seems to be becoming more of a thing. Do you notice that?
So the journey towards rights are never a straight line up. They're roller coasters. Okay, so you have times where it's good, you're going up, and then you're going to hit a dip, then you got to go up again. So I don't know. Are we in the downside of the dip? I hope we're plateauing. I mean, we saw this in Leduc, right? They shut down a council meeting over a bloody crosswalk. Like a queer crosswalk is enough to shut down a Leduc council meeting.
Well, that was about a whole lot of that was wild. We talked to Leduc's mayor about that. That was like they think chemtrails, and I mean it was
half the room wasn't from Leduc. Yeah. Like I zoomed in to the Westlock Town Council over the Pride crosswalk, and they went ahead unanimously. And so Ralph Larriger and his council did a good job there. I think some of this is still anxiety and nervousness coming out of the pandemic. I think some folks who feel, that their world isn't unfolding the way they thought are getting angry, and they're getting organized, and they're finding each other on social media, and they're lashing out. But I can tell you that the majority of Canadians are with us, and it's why, as legislators, we put protections in place for trans kids and trans people across the country. And it's also why we now have a $100 million LGBTQ action plan that's rolling out across the country. But I'll say this, because I talk about this when I'm talking about bringing people to Canada, because that's my job, right? Like we had 22 million visitors in 2019. We're almost back there. My job is to get 40% more revenue from tourism between now and 2030. That's the federal tourism growth strategy that I just rolled out. But here's a stat for you. We are 0.0044% of the world's population, and yet we have more than 10% of the world's prides. So we punch 20 times above our weight when it comes to being proud as a country. There are 1,100 prides in the world, and Canada consistently has more than 125 of them. So that also tells you something about who we are as people, and that includes Edmonton. And it was interesting because when I started as special advisor, it was Pride Month, and it was very Toronto-centric. So I blew that up. It's Pride season because Winnipeg starts us off in May, and Calgary gets us to September long weekend. But Jasper's in March, Whistler's in February. In February, so there's prides happening in this country all year round. And so, look, we're all in this together, and as long as we just let each other live our lives, we're going to have a healthier, more diverse country, and that's what it's all about.
I want to talk to you about this tourism growth strategy,
Sure.
and I also want to ask you a question. We put this was more controversial than I imagined it would be, which is kind of like a regular common occurrence on a show like this. Didn't see it coming. Linda Steele and Jody Vance, Steele and Vance from Czech in on the West Coast, and so they joined us for our most recent roundtable. And I don't have to tell you that the federal carbon tax bumped up on July 1st. It made the price at the pumps a little more expensive, and so I asked them. If you were calling the shots, like this is just people having coffee. Like this is just how people talk. I said if you were calling the shots, if you were the PM or you were calling the shots, would you pause the increase on the carbon tax based on inflation and cost of living and all that kind of stuff? And anyway, their answers really kind of set people off. I was trying to stay off my phone during my time off, but people were kind of like, getting a little fussy about it, which is fine. I want to ask you about that in just a second. We're talking to Federal Tourism Minister Randy Boissonnault. He's an MP out of Edmonton right now. And of course, these conversations happen because of Real Talk sponsors and support for this podcast in particular. And the following message comes from Pathways Alliance. Oil sands operations contribute significant carbon emissions in Canada. So, as you just heard from the minister, the 6 largest companies are working together. By the way, Pathways Alliance is not making the minister come here. He's not getting paid from Pathways Alliance. We're not paying the minister. There's no shenanigans. But 6 of the largest companies are working together and with governments, as you just heard, to take strides on the path to net zero from their operations. You can see how and get more details at pathwaysalliance.ca. With the Calgary Stampede in the books, you know what the best next big event in Alberta is, and that's, of course, coming up right here in Edmonton. We want to invite you to be part of something big. YWCA Edmonton is thrilled to be the charity of choice for this year's K-Days 50-50, and they need your help. You can join their volunteer team on the K-Days grounds between July 21st and 30th to help spread the word about that 50-50. The more tickets they sell, the better it is for the YWCA right here in Edmonton. Your benefits as a volunteer, aside from obviously doing amazing work for an organization that has been doing exactly that for more than 100 years, free entry to K-Days, free transportation on ETS, and a $10 food voucher. You can learn more, be part of the movement for change, and register as a volunteer at ywcaofedmonton.org, and we'll have that link in the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube. And for those of you that through this summer are starting to get inspired, you're starting to dream, you're watching those clouds move, you're listening to the rustle of the trees and the babbling brooks, and you're starting to think, what might life look like in the fall? Maybe it's time for change. Take 2 minutes today to check out Canada's Open University at athabascau.ca. Athabasca University's world-class accredited online programs and courses offer you the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. Your only commute is to your device if you need to take time off, or if you want to fast forward your program, you can do either, because you're calling the shots when you enroll as a student at Athabasca University. So basically, Linda Steele and Jody Vance both say if they were calling the shots, they would press pause on the increase to the carbon tax. Now, of course, the critics will say, and we did discuss it, you can check out the roundtable at your convenience. But basically, and we'll get you on mute your mic there, but basically they said the cost of living is so high, people can't afford to get into houses right now. Gasoline is out of control. People are trying to road trip with their families so they can't. The critics say you can't pause progress on the climate file to satiate or to keep happy the political critics of something like this. And it prompted really good conversation, which is kind of the point.
Yep.
But of course, this isn't even something that the federal government would have considered, right?
No, it's a straight line to 170, in part because you said it in your opening remarks, like business wants stability, right? And business wants predictability. And the best way to have that, look, it was Pathways that came together and said, look, can you just give us the straight line? Like, tell us what predictability looks like for the price on pollution from now to 2050. So that's the path that we're on. And look, people think that if we pause the carbon tax now, it's going to give, it's going to help with affordability. We're already doing that because 100% of the money that we raise in every jurisdiction where there is a federal backstop goes back to that jurisdiction. So like earlier this week, Albertans got $193 in their direct deposit. It's the Climate Action Incentive Rebate. What does that mean? That's your offset for the price on pollution. Now, British Columbia doesn't see it because they have a different program than us. Same with Quebec. But any province that has the federal backstop gets that money that offsets. And I can tell you, it goes up. I've seen it go up every year because the price on pollution goes up every year. And I mean, we've been outside yesterday. We've been outside this morning. You see the smoke in the air? Like the sky hasn't been blue for 4 days. Not here in Northern Alberta. Those are the forest fires. The atmospheric rivers are real. Fiona's real. And so here's the scary thing, though. Like, we're going to get all this done, and it's not going to have an immediate effect. Like, what we have now is baked in from stuff that was in the atmosphere 10, 15, and 20 years ago. So the reason we're taking action now is so that your kids, when you're with your grandkids at Stampede, are not dealing with like baseball-sized hail.
But is it hard to get people to, like, most people, I mean, of course everyone can be saying, think of the kids, think of the grandkids, and people do care about the future of the planet, I think.
Yep.
But then people also go, yeah, but like,
you got to make your bills pay. You got to pay your bills. Yeah,
right?
I get it.
And a lot of people are focused on like the here and now for their family. It's that kind of self-preservation human tendency, right? Is it hard to sell people on the big picture when a lot of them are more concerned about the next 2 weeks?
It is harder. I can tell you, look, the reality of the country and the reality of North America is it became a little easier when this started to affect Toronto, Montreal, and New York.
Huh.
Right? Because now, like, you got a majority of the country going, holy smokes, this stuff really actually does happen. And look, here in Alberta, we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can because I want to make sure that the lens that got focused on us in the past around dirty oil comes away forever because we are responsible stewards of the resource. And I want to make sure that we're doing a good job on that. At the same time, we got to make sure that we're pulling carbons out of the air because we're one of the jurisdictions in the country and in the world that produces high levels of emission. But look, let's look at this with clear eyes. Transportation is 25%. Oil and gas is 26%. So it's both sectors that got to literally clean up their acts. That's why the announcement we made on Friday, hydrogen announcement, big deal, like 100 hydrogen vehicles from Toyota starting to be delivered. We got the first 5 of them. It's the largest net zero fleet of Toyotas anywhere in the world. Where? In Edmonton, in Alberta, in Canada. It's an EIA thing, YEG thing. Why? Because we want to show Albertans and Edmontonians that hydrogen is the way of the future. You're going to see hydrogen trains, hydrogen buses, Air Products setting up here, $1.6 billion installation, largest net zero hydrogen plant in the world, right in Northeast Edmonton. Transformative. Like, this is the epicenter of the hydrogen economy for the whole country, right here in Edmonton.
And you have to push for this stuff because as federal tourism minister, you're also trying to get thousands more planes coming into Canada. You're trying to get more buses on the highway. You're trying to get people renting more cars, right?
You got it. Look, and people want, I found it a strange term when I started in this job. I knew about sustainable tourism. I didn't know anything about regenerative tourism.
What is that?
Exactly. It's leave the place as good or better when you found it, when you leave.
Not a new principle.
Not a new principle, but one that really brings in Indigenous tourism, respect for the land. Like, it's almost like shop local, eat local, but from a tourism perspective. So how do you take an ecosystem and make sure that it can have visitors, but by having those visitors, it actually, provides a circular economy for that community that doesn't over-tourist it. And so having that as a goal in this federal tourism growth strategy works, but so does cleaning up some of our assets. Like, some of the tourism attractions we have in this country need more than a fresh coat of paint. So we need a whole new raft of attractions. So we want to invest in those.
I just came up with a question that I knew you weren't going to answer. I'll ask it anyway. What's the most potentially stunning tourism attraction in Canada that right now you are currently totally embarrassed about?
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to come up with that.
You're not going to like the vernacular. Your team behind the scenes is like, do not answer. Don't answer that question.
I'll come back to you in
give me this instead in closing, because I know you got to
build. I have one.
Okay.
So look, we built, it's not that I'm embarrassed. It's that I think we didn't connect the dots. So right now there's a highway that goes all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. Okay? We built that highway over 7 years. And now Americans come up on their bikes. They come up as think about this. You take your spring break and you get on a highway and you go to put your toe in the Arctic Ocean. And maybe you're crazy enough to go swim in the ocean.
Do it.
Is there a place to grab a burger nearby? Is there a place to actually sleep nearby? No, they go back 2 hours down the highway to actually go spend their money there. So missed opportunity when you have all that traffic going to a new location. So we have to think about the whole ecosystem that we're building. So am I embarrassed about that? No. Do I see a missed opportunity? Absolutely. Do I want more missed opportunities? Hell no. So it's about connecting our communities with our provinces and our federal government to make sure that when we're saying to Americans and Brits and Germans and Japanese and folks from around the world, come and check us out, that we have an experience that they're then going to tell their friends about that then brings more people here.
You were in Whistler. We'll ask you this in closing.
Sure.
You were just in Whistler talking about the federal tourism growth strategy. What's one thing, like we don't want people to sort of tune out and lose interest if we start getting into the weeds, but like what's one key change? What's one new key method or angle of approach on how you're kickstarting tourism? People underestimate, I think, tourism's contribution to GDP. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's more than the auto parts sector. It's $105 billion in revenue as a country.
Wild.
It's our number one service export. I can tell you, one of the big things that I did is we put $50 million. That's going to go to the agency that markets Canada around the world. It's called Destination Canada, based out of Vancouver. We're going to go get 50 new international events, conferences, congresses, spread them around the country, and show the world what we can offer. And then when we get that done, I'm going to blur the lines between sport and tourism. Because when I did Ironman in Penticton half a lifetime ago, was I a tourist or was I a sports person? Was I a sports person or I was a tourist? I was both. So the fact that the government kind of puts up, silos between tourism and sport, Minister Pascal St-Onge and I have now said, forget that. We're not doing that anymore. We want those amateur sports events here. So when you have the ITU, it's awesome. But when you have amateur triathlon here, guess what? They bring their families. And then they stay because they get on the road, right? So that's a big deal. Final thing that is in the strategy that's a big deal that I learned from the Americans and the Brits and the Germans is I'm pulling all 23 of my ministerial colleagues who touch tourism around the table, and we're going to meet twice a year to solve issues that face the tourism sector. Because when I think of airports, I got to think of Omar Alghabra. When I think of borders, it's Marco Mendicino. When I think of food, agriculture, it's Mary-Claude Bibeau. And then I got 6 ministers for regional development agencies, all part of that. What about immigration? What about labor? What about arts and culture? See what I'm talking about? 23 of my colleagues, plus me, touch tourism, and we're going to get together in a ministerial tourism growth council and get some stuff done to bring more people right here to Edmonton.
Unfair follow-up question for you.
As always.
It's more fair for your colleague, Minister St-Onge,
Sure.
Minister of Sport. Just saw that Nike's announced that it's permanently severing its sponsorship with Hockey Canada. This was due to the obvious.
Sure.
I think everybody knows
Understood.
why, but the scandal and I guess probably Nike's assessment that Hockey Canada hasn't done enough to address it. How significant has this been? The revelations around Hockey Canada and what that brand, even that logo, has. Like in our house, we have beach towels with that logo on it. I have shower, flip flops with that logo on it. I mean, like everybody's sort of like felt pride around that logo, and it's been, I think, obviously for the complainants here, for the survivors, for the victims, it's been the most troubling. But for millions of people across the country, this has been a tough pill to swallow. How has that resonated, if at all, around the cabinet table, and how does that land with the federal government?
Oh, it resonated loudly and clearly, and Minister St-Onge is an athlete herself, Olympian, and she's fierce, and she did the right thing on this file at the right time. And look, the brand is damaged. Hockey Canada's brand, and let's see if they're able to reset with the changing of the board. Am I surprised that sponsors have left? No. And I think you're going to see more challenges for the brand moving forward, and they've got to be. You got to treat people well, and we're in a new era, right? Like you can't have shenanigans, you can't treat people badly. Misogyny has no place in sport, and neither does homophobia. And so next time we can talk about the NHL backing off of the.
Well,
the
my only
pride
thing
stuff.
is, you know what? Hey, do you want to do like a crossover on the fly with Adler? Because Charles Adler, I know he'd love to talk about. Can you
set that up?
Can you? Well, no, let's do it right now. Can you stay for 2 more minutes?
Sure.
Do you guys have to go? Just say yes if you have to go. You got to go. You have to go. 2 minutes. Well, okay. Why don't you tee this up for Adler? I'll ask him about this. What do you make of that? the National Hockey League, essentially Gary Bettman, commissioner of the league, saying, and we've talked about it before on the show lots, they're not doing the theme jerseys anymore, the warm-up jerseys. They say it's not just pride, but it is pride. I mean, it is. But it also will affect things like breast cancer and military appreciation and all that kind of stuff.
Connor was very clear. He's like, he said it was disappointing.
Big time.
And so it is disappointing. Like, we respect big corporates and big associations to lean in. And if you're following your followers, something's wrong. Like, you got to lead. And I expect the NHL to lead. As a federal government, we lead. And when you see big brands and big organizations stepping back and not leading, you have to answer the question and ask why.
Yeah.
What are they not prepared to do or change inside their own organizations? When Canadian banks can embrace pride to the degree that TD and RBC, these are arch conservative entities. Let's be serious. Like, they manage our money and they hold our money. We want them to be small c conservative, right? When they can do the hard work and quite frankly let people go that aren't on board with that kind of change, why can't the NHL?
That's Randy Boissonnault. He's the federal minister of tourism. We never let you know what questions you're going to face, and that's because half the time we don't know either.
It just happens. Thanks,
we've
man.
always appreciated your availability.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for
All
this.
the
You
best.
can let us know what you think about this interview by sending us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Charles Adler's coming up in 90 seconds. These conversations happen because of Real Talk sponsors like Apex Automation. Their number one message to you right now is that they're hiring. They're looking for Canada's best professional engineers to join a team that is putting people ahead of profits, and it's growing faster than any other automation firm in Canada right now. Now, their main expertise is industrial control systems engineering and software development solutions for any industrial process. So the main subcategories are things like electrical and instrumentation engineering, process engineering, drafting services. If you're intrigued by a career in pipelines, natural gas processing, potash mining, robotics, material handling, upstream oil extraction facilities, you name it, your future is bright with Apex Automation. You can get in touch with their team today or simply check out the careers link. Just click apexautomation.ca/careers and find out more what it's like to work at Apex Automation. Johnny, we came home this weekend to a backyard we don't even recognize anymore. Not done, but it has officially begun. The excavation is underway. They got all the
shovels
machinery.
in the ground.
The shovels are in the ground. Our backyard overhaul, our project, and this is one that we're so proud and excited to be investing in with Eden Landscaping. Mike and his team were there over the weekend just getting the ball rolling on this, and it's been so exciting for us because for a couple of years now, it's just been my wife Carrie getting her Pinterest board together. We've been taking a look at what's inspired us from other landscape designs, and we put that all in front of Mike and his team and said, how does this fit our lifestyle? And quite frankly, more importantly, how does this fit our budget? And seeing them bring that together has really been something to watch. I mean, I'm so excited to show you the finished product. When it's done, you can get in touch with Eden today. Check out their portfolio online. Their ultra-modern designs, their natural beauty. LandscapeEdmonton.ca is where you can see more about their custom landscaping services. This is a company we're proud to be partnering with. That's Eden Landscaping at LandscapeEdmonton.ca. And speaking of builds, of course, want to remind you that this studio that we broadcast from them, this studio where we create this show, was built by Complete Care Restoration. Their team is busy right now, all hands on deck. I was talking to one of their leadership group members, Kelly. He said to me, with all of the fire damage and floods that have happened across the province right now, the team at Complete Care Restoration is pulling out all the stops to make sure that they're getting Albertans back into their homes as quickly as possible, but they're not cutting any corners. They're making sure that construction job, that rehabilitation, that restoration is done right the first time. This is your biggest investment. Don't trust it to anybody else other than Complete Care Restoration. Well, every Monday, it's an absolute pleasure to check in with the Titan of Talk, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, now podcaster, and, of course, newspaper columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press, Charles freaking Adler. It's great to see your face, my man. How was your weekend?
Really good. I was very impressed with Randy freaking Boissonnault.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Smart cookie. And I'll tell you, I'm really impressed with his staff. Just as smart. You gave him the opportunity to stay over and spend some time with you and me both.
Yeah.
And
He's
the
like,
staff
nah.
immediately said, no time. We've got no time for that. You know, this is my reputation, right? Staffs, it doesn't matter. They're liberal, the conservative, NDP, Bernier's staff, it doesn't matter. The staff of the man on the moon. You just don't know what Adler's going to say. You don't know what he's going to ask. He may trap
I'm
you. Your career may end in nanoseconds. Don't do it.
It was
We've got
awesome.
no time. No time.
It was awesome. We had lots of time until we had no time at all.
No time.
Yeah. what would you have led with?
Well, I would have led with, I would have said, Mr. Boissonnault, can we not agree and get a government statement on this? And the statement simply is, the NHL is caving to the Trumpian wing, the QAnon wing, the crazy wing of American politics in its culture war point of view. The only reason the NHL and Bettman has decided to do what they do, which is basically make sure that there's no NHL endorsement of, LGBTQ. It's just so controversial, right? The idea of, people who are LGBTQ having rights. I mean, this is just too controversial for the Trumpian QAnon types. And so the NHL is caving to that. Let's get a government statement on that. And that's what I would have asked Mr. Boissonnault, and the staff would have just had a heart attack and ulcers. Don't go there. We got no green light for this.
Yeah,
we don't need this.
Well, as soon as he said that he expects, what did he say? Something like, once you're following your followers, you're in trouble, or something like that. He says, I expect the
was
NHL to
perfect.
lead. I thought the way that my brain works, I went, that's a pull quote.
Yeah,
like that's a highlight for this interview. So we'll see how that one lands. But
Well, I don't dislike what he said there, but I just want it a lot tougher. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want the Canadian government to be a sackless wonder on this. The NHL, I get that the head office is in New York and whatever. Hockey is Canada's game. The government of Canada ought to support the game and ought to support people in this country by and large in favor of those nights, whether the nights are for breast cancer or for the LGBT people. It doesn't matter to me, but it's obvious to me that it's the culture war that's going on in the United States right now. And of course, I guess to some extent, it's also going on in Canada because Poilievre's people, I mean, that all they do, they're on the right-wing sites all day. What are the Americans doing? What are the Americans doing? Right? I think the government of Canada ought to make a statement on what the NHL is doing here, because it's not just about the LGBT file. It's about the general file that the National Hockey League is allowing itself to be influenced, to be governed, if you will, by the crazy wing of U.S. politics. I'd love for the government of Canada, whether it's Boissonnault, whether it's the sports minister, prime minister, it doesn't matter to me. I'd love for somebody representing our national government to make a statement about the National Hockey League.
and where's the conversation with the players? Like, they just make this decision. Like Matthew Tkachuk, Connor McDavid, all the biggest stars are totally for Pride Night and wearing the jerseys, and because of what, four guys, they make this decision.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's-
And just so we're absolutely clear on this, and keeping this on a national perspective and an international perspective. One of the reasons Canada is so respected by people around the world, one of the reasons why more people want to come to Canada than any other country except perhaps the United States, and for obvious reasons people want the American dollars and the American opportunities, I get that. But Canada is one of the countries that people in the rest of the world want to come to. One of the reasons for that is because of how we respect and honor the LGBTQ. And that isn't about the LGBTQ as far as many people are concerned. It's about egalitarianism, okay? We treat everyone equally, and we believe that all people deserve rights. We don't believe that people's rights should depend on what particular cults in particular political rooms in particular red states or blue states think. That's not how we run the country. And people around the world have gotten the message that Canada has an open door policy to all people. That's very, very meaningful. When the NHL wants to shut the door, they can say they're just shutting the door on the policy in general about sponsorships. We know that this is about LGBTQ, and we can understand that in the United States, various sports organizations simply do not want to confront the crazies. I love Trudeau for many things, okay? And people can get upset with me in Alberta or anywhere else. One of the reasons I love Trudeau as a prime minister is he has no trouble confronting the crazies. When's the last time Pierre Poilievre confronted a crazy? I mean, he takes pictures with them at the Stampede.
Yeah.
But does he ever confront them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you better believe that you and I are going to talk about the Stampede T-shirt thing. I mean, he's going to have to at some point, like, because is this more of a challenge for conservative politicians in Canada? It's more of a challenge for Republicans in the States. Like, you get like those on the extreme left for sure, I guess, like kind of, the sort of like the far left fringe, but that's more of a problem for the Greens and the NDs. Like, people say, like, the NDP is a diluted, watered down party. They have to grapple with it more than the Liberals do. Whereas the Conservatives, to win a Conservative leadership, you kind of have to, or I don't know if you have to, but the formula.
I don't think you have to.
Maybe I don't know the formula for. Well, maybe you do. Like ask Michael Chong if you have to. He'd probably say you do because he hasn't even considered it, and he's probably the brightest star, one of them, on the Conservative roster. What about Aaron O'Toole? Like, was looked at as like milquetoast because he wouldn't kind of like stay in bed.
But they've got to get louder about it. I've said a million times. If you're on the center left, get louder. There's nothing wrong with that. Why should the volume be controlled by the far right? Why shouldn't Aaron O'Toole and Michael Chong get louder? Why shouldn't they get on a microphone, get on your show, my show? I don't really care where they do it.
Yeah.
And simply say, we are not prepared to sell the entire country out because 10% of the country is crazy, and it's much easier winning a conservative leadership with the crazies. Why don't they make a statement about that?
Yeah, and I just think, it's just a bad look for the whole brand, to be honest with you. So I've been looking forward, obviously, to asking about this. You and I texted ahead of time. We knew we were going to talk about these T-shirts. Got Randy Boissonnault's take on it. I mean, the guy's, like, number one, credibility, gay man, but number two, special advisor to the PM on LGBTQ2S plus issues for a long time. So this is the guy that has, like, advised the Prime Minister of Canada on stuff like this. So I appreciate his take. Let me ask you, as a pundit, about this situation, and then I want to play some video. Actually, this guy, the guy with the T-shirt, was caught by an independent journalist who got a couple comments from, and we'll bring that to our audience in just a second. But everybody knows the story. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, official opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, photograph of the guy whose shirt basically says, thank a straight person, or thank a couple straight people, I guess, for your existence here, straight pride. Both political leaders say that they didn't see the shirts and they walked it back pretty quick, which from a political strategy point, if you're going to walk it back, don't take the photo in the first place. And if you're going to take the photo, then don't walk it back. But what do you make of this, Adler?
Well, first of all, how can you not see the shirt? Second of all, how can the staff not see the shirt? And you'll never be able to tell me, because Danielle Smith has lots of experience, Pierre Poilievre has lots of experience, and I'm going to just put this out there. I have lots of experience with these situations. And there is always a staffer or two staffers or three staffers looking out for us so that we're not embarrassed. Look, I've been on TV shows where they want me on the same screen with all kinds of nut bars. And I've always said no. Sometimes I have staffers to help me with that, but I've always said no. And the reason I say no is because if you don't say no, you're on YouTube forever, or a photo forever, looking like a real knob. Danielle Smith is a lot of things. She's not a knob. Pierre Poilievre is a lot of things. He's not a knob. None of them are operating with no protection, but they want to have it both ways. They want to appeal to the crazies on the one hand, and then they want to say, you know what, I don't want to. Sorry. No mas. It doesn't fly. And I've said before, regardless of how much I respect Danielle Smith's innate intelligence, she is, with each day, whether she's a premier or a candidate, with each day finding lying, and I'm going to have to use the L word, finding lying easy. She's doing it easily. She's doing it casually. She's doing it frequently. And the idea that she had no idea what she was doing, I didn't see. I got thousands of people. I'm not. Sorry. She's a pro. She does see. And Pierre Poilievre, it was obvious that it was set up with Pierre Poilievre's people, I think 2 hours after the crap hit the fan. And when the Pierre Poilievre people saw that the crap hit the fan with Danielle Smith, they wanted in on it. They wanted a piece of that apple pie. And once again, they're trying to have it both ways. But the big picture here is that the Conservative Party of Canada and the United Conservative Party do not have to be governed by the crazies. It is laziness that does it. It's the easy way to do things. You get lots of clicks, you get lots of social media firepower by trying to be on both sides of these controversies, and that is what so much of this is about. I will never believe that you cannot have a conservative government in Alberta or a conservative government based in Ottawa without the nut bars. Sorry, this country is not crazy. If I believed that this country was just one big crazy nation, just one big cult, I'd say, well, of course you need them. They represent a tiny sliver of our population.
Pierre and Smith, I mean, say what you want about them. They're very smart. And they have very smart handlers.
Of course
You're telling me no one tapped them on the shoulder. And I think the thing is they just rather roll the dice. They'd rather have that portion of their vote stick with them and just say sorry after. You know what I mean? There's no way they didn't look at this and say this could be problematic.
It doesn't even like just, and again, I tried to say this to the minister, like, you know, I recognize, Adler, that this comes across as a little bit like callous, like for me just to talk about the political strategy of it. But the political strategy behind this doesn't even make sense, because if you're going to snap a photo with the person, then don't apologize. And if you're going to apologize, then don't snap the photo. Like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, let's get to this. So here's and then Chuck, we'll get you to comment on this. So this is an independent journalist by the name of Mocha Bazirgan. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Has the exclusive here. He managed to get this guy in an interview, and I want to play. Here's just about a minute and a half of the man that wore the Straight Pride T-shirt, the man that got in for photos with Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre, and who says now that he's not going to support either of them. Check this twist out.
How do you feel about that? They're saying they don't agree with your shirt and they're caving into media's pressure.
Wow, to be honest with you, like, Danielle Smith, I had very, very, very high hopes for her. Like, you know, she had passed the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which is, you know, put the Alberta First Act, which I'm very proud of. I come from BC, but Alberta is now my home, right? And, you know, I'm pretty sad that she caved within 24 hours of taking a picture with me, and she could deny this picture all that she wants. She read my shirt. There was not an entourage of people there. There was me, my girlfriend, and like two other people standing there when she took the picture with me. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed in her. As for Pierre, I had high hopes for this guy. I thought he was truly great. I thought he was going to bring Canada back again. I thought he was our Donald Trump of Canada, but it turns out, you know what? He's just another leftist wearing a right side suit. So as far as Pierre goes, man, he lost my vote. Danielle, she lost my vote too. So, you know, it's time for reform. It's time to change our governments, and it's time for the people to stand up and unite. All races, all colors, all genders. We all come from Earth. We're all the same people.
I don't know what to make of it. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, what I make from it is that both Danielle Smith's team and Pierre Poilievre's team, they're run by amateurs. And that is on Poilievre and that is on Smith. Beyond left, right, morality, immorality, ethics, LGBT, beyond all of that, these are amateurs. And if the people of this country, whether it's the people of Alberta, the people nationally, want amateurs to be running the governments because somehow that's more populist, you know, it's not elitist to have people who don't know what they're doing what they're doing. If people want, you know, professionals in the surgical units, in the operating theaters, if they want the professionals planning our roads, planning what we need for our various projects, whether they're energy projects or any other projects, if we need professionals in every walk of life except our governments, in this case provincial and federal, if that's okay with the people, that's okay with me, because I'm for liberal democracy. But I'm never going to believe that the people of Alberta or of Canada want people like that to be running the country. And when he says, you know, he was hoping but Pierre Poilievre was a Trump, well, why wouldn't he hope that? So much of the messaging that Pierre Poilievre's amateurs put out there are basically saying, we're Trump light. We're the Canadian version of Trump. And as far as the sovereignty business is concerned, during the campaign, not the election campaign, but during the leadership campaign, sovereignty, sovereignty, sovereignty. So if this guy thinks that Alberta's premier is basically a closet separatist, why wouldn't he think that?
I gotta call this out too, Ryan, because you brought up the stereotype about a week and a half ago. He's wearing the white brim sunglasses.
Yeah, the
in
white
this
sunglasses.
photo.
Although I did hear from a couple buddies who have white sunglasses that were like, "Hey, man, that was a BS move. That was a BS play." I just don't let this. I don't know. This should be. I guess I don't want to sit here let this be a lesson. This isn't like Preacher Jespo a day removed from the Sunday sermon, but you look at him he's describing Pierre Poilievre now as a leftist. What did he say? A leftist in a right-leaning suit or something like that? But hang on.
He's a far right-wing guy.
Why? But why? Because he apologized. He's a leftist all of a sudden.
Ryan, there are people in Alberta. Okay, right in your backyard, there are people who call you and me leftists.
What? Seriously? I've never heard that.
They call you and me leftists. So it's all over Twitter.
Next, you're going to tell me some people think I'm a socialist, Charles.
You're leftist, socialist, whatever. Yeah. Ridiculous labels. Because as far as those people are concerned, unless you're on the far, far right, and they do the same thing in the States, Donald Trump does it all the time. So do all of his people. They've got that term, rhino. Republican in name only,
right?
If you're not if you're not a Trump Republican, you're not a real Republican. Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like that go after you. And there are people in this country who impersonate everything the Americans do. And so Jesperson, Adler, we're socialists, we're communists, whatever. They know nothing about us. To call people like you and me, socialists, people who obviously come from small business, support small business, thrive on small business, and want governments to get out of the way of business. Socialists don't talk that way. Socialists are all over envying anybody who accumulates any wealth at all, whether it's a large corporation, small corporation, or an independent professional. I'm not into envy. My grandmother taught me envy was cancer. And I certainly don't envy any organization, in this case political, both on the conservative federal side and on the provincial Alberta side. I don't envy any organization that allows itself, to hire a bunch of amateurs who every single day, in my opinion, are putting a gun to the head of credibility in those organizations. I would not be able to sleep at night if I had amateurs on my staff.
Yeah, and so this guy, and I'm not let's not turn this guy into John Wayne. He doesn't deserve some sort of celebrity status. He's green shirt guy. Nobody even knows his fucking name. So he's green shirt guy. But the fact that all it took was an apology. All it took was a moment of, and I wouldn't even call it decency. It's these are political survival tactics. But from these two camps, the Poilievre and Smith camp, an apology to turn this guy off completely, and not only withdraw his support from Pierre Poilievre, but to start calling him a leftist. So it's that. I think back to the Artur Pawlowski thing, that 11-minute phone call that got Danielle Smith in so much trouble. Not enough trouble to lose the election, but still enough trouble. And what is Artur Pawlowski doing now? Campaigning against Danielle Smith, calling her a problem. He's watered down and diluted and problematic. So there's no loyalty here at all. So you got to wonder, what's the play? Right here on our live chat, Alyssa says, "I love when they start to eat each other." Jillian makes a great point.
The snakes are turning on each other.
The snakes are turning. Jillian says the worst part is that, and again, I guess it's a race to the bottom trying to find out what's the worst part about this, but she says the worst part is that it's not even true. That only straight people can help make a life. She says, "Was I the only one bothered by that?" Jillian, I don't try to get too personal with my family members without their consent, but I will say, my younger sister Megan and her partner Mare have a beautiful little boy, Arrow, and there were, as far as I know, including the third party, exactly 0 straight people involved in the creation of that wonderful life. Maybe one, but neither of the people raising him. So there's just not that we need to fact check this, not that we need to get into the semantics, but Jillian's absolutely right. The T-shirt's not even accurate. So, if we're going to start concerning ourselves with the accuracy of sort of deadbolt moves like this.
There are many people in this country who are in the closet. Some are in the gay man closet, some are in the lesbian woman closet. They're in the closet. The trans people closet, whatever. There are many closeted people in this country, always have been, always will be. And guess what? They have sex. And you've got people with male parts having sex with people with female parts. Where their heads are at, where they're mentally, psychologically, what they really want to do, I don't really give a damn. But the idea that this guy, this freakazoid, who now thinks that Pierre Poilievre is a left-winger and that disappointed that Danielle Smith may not be a separatist. This freakazoid's perspective on biology means squat to me. And if anyone, and I realize that, Facebook, Twitter, social media is filled with people who go, yeah, the guy's right. The guy understands biology. No, the guy doesn't understand biology. The guy doesn't understand anything.
I will say at the end, though, there was kind of that twist, that unexpected twist at the end, Johnny, where he all of a sudden goes, and I just want everybody to get along, all sexual, all gender, all genders, by the way, he said, which I thought was actually, he didn't say both genders. He said all genders.
Ryan, why don't you book the guy?
What do I just Google green shirt guy?
I'm not taking a shot. Book green shirt guy.
Yeah.
And whether he wants to wear the green shirt or no shirt, I don't care. You know
what I'd love to see is, that the green shirt guy, the other green shirt guy, Johnny? The green shirt guy,
this guy
laughing at the Sanctuary City protesters at a city council meeting down in the States. I would love to see
him laughing at the
green shirt guy laughing at green shirt guy. That would be a mashup that the world could use.
Green shirt guy with the straight pride. I'm afraid he'd walk in on like DMT or something and just he sounds like he was all over the place in that. Like I started off like, okay, I think I know what this guy's stance is, and then it just went off the rails. Like,
hey Chuck, would you That is the question. That's always the question is like, who do you choose to platform? I would love to pick the brain of green shirt guy, but I just don't know the value of it to the audience.
I would interview. I mean, the justification is real simple. We want to know who it is and what it is that for some reason conservatives in this country, provincially and federally, feel that they need to pander to. Who are these? Who are these people? Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, people would accuse you of punching down because it's virtually impossible to do an interview like that the whole time with a straight face and objective questions. It's virtually impossible.
Well, I didn't say I wanted to do it.
Yeah, you just want to.
I'm outsourcing.
Yeah, you said outsourcing. I don't want to start my house on fire. I just want to watch a house burn, not my house.
Shirt guy's had his 15 minutes.
Shirt guy's had his 15 minutes, and it's not lost on us either that in the background of that video, there's two Calgary police officers just mingling, just casually mingling. Just in case.
Green shirt guy's under suspicion.
Yes, under observation. He's under police observation.
Anyway, next time I say to you, you ought to book so and so. You or Johnny have got to come back with, why don't you book?
Yeah, why don't you book him? How's that going, by the way? You've officially launched the Charles Adler Show. You're about 3 weeks now into the podcasting, as the driving force.
It's going great. I mean, according to all the metrics, I don't want to get into all the business stuff. It's going great. I want to thank, as always, people of Canada, specifically the people of Alberta. I can tell you this, that well over 20% of our audience is coming from Alberta.
That's awesome.
Alberta is always my lucky charm, my good luck charm, no matter how many far right-wing conservatives say things like, you're no longer in touch with Albertans.
Yeah.
I want to thank Albertans for supporting me as always. But beyond all of that, I've got something that I want to discuss with you, and I want to discuss with anyone who wants to discuss it, because I ran into a $3.25 small Diet Coke at a Wendy's.
I saw that you wrote a column on this in the Free Press.
I didn't drink it. I didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of it, because the idea, and I don't want to hear from people say, you can afford this. It's not about what I can afford, okay? There's a principle here. I don't think that people should pay for something. I mean, it hasn't been given to them yet. It wasn't poured. It wasn't spoiling anything. But I just don't think when people are confronted by a transaction that they don't feel is fair, I don't think they should go along with it because they're being the stereotypical polite Canadian. I could have been the stereotypical polite Canadian. I asked for a Diet Coke at the Wendy's counter. It wasn't a traditional restaurant with lots and lots of staff. Okay, it was a fast food restaurant, and the Diet Coke was going to come from the fountain. So it wasn't a bottle or a can, which is, in my opinion, far better than the stuff that comes from the fountain. I'll put that aside. I asked for a Diet Coke, and the person says 25. I didn't hear the number before 25. So I just assumed it was $1.25. So I took $1.25 out of my pocket. And then he corrected me. Once again, I only heard the 25 part. And I took another dollar out, and I was okay with that. Okay, fine, $2.25, whatever. I'm just thirsty. I just want my Diet Coke. But then he said, sir, it's $3.25. I said, $3.25 for a small Diet Coke? And he says, yeah, that's what it is. And then I just said, no sale. And I just think if more people, I'm just using this as a metaphor, okay? I think if more people in this country were to choose to basically say no sale, or it's not a matter of whether you say it or not, it's about doing it. If they didn't get the card out, if they didn't get whether it's the Visa, cash, I don't care what they're using, if they didn't pay for things that they feel are unfairly priced, I think it might help bring down inflation. The reason I'm so concerned about the Diet Coke isn't the Diet Coke. I just think if people get away with gouging, and I've got to use the word, if people get away with gouging Canadians and Canadians just politely and obediently go along, you've got this Bank of Canada governor that's raising interest rates. So the idea that interest rates are being raised to bring inflation down, if, this is a big if, okay, I haven't done a study on this, but if part of inflation is Canadians obediently going along, paying prices that they feel are outrageous. I'm not talking about the stuff they absolutely need, like heat and air conditioning. I'm talking about this kind of thing. How many times in your life, on a given day, a given week, you just came back from the Stampede, how many times do you run into situations where you don't have to buy a particular product? You don't have to, not if it's unfairly priced. How many times do you say, no, I'm not doing it? Or do you just say, well, you know,
I would say
I'm not going to create a scene here.
Number one, I have not walked a mile in those shoes, Charles. And you know what your first mistake was? Is that here, per costfindercanada.com, which is an independent consumer advocacy resource, the cost of a soft drink small size at a Dairy Queen in Canada is $1.79. $1.79.
Not $3.25.
Not $3.25.
In a related story,
like at a competing fast food restaurant.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett's
I knew it
wife.
wasn't $3.25. The reason I was surprised is just I'll just since I put Wendy's on the table, I might as well put McDonald's on the table.
No. I'm trying to get you to stop mentioning the competitors to our sponsors, and I'm trying to start mentioning our sponsors and point out.
I didn't realize I was hamstrung by Dairy Queen. I love Dairy Queen.
You didn't
but when
get
I go
your
to Dairy
free,
Queen, it's
you
not
didn't
for
get
Diet
your free
Coke.
dilly bars. You didn't get the free dilly bars we sent you.
I go for Blizzards, man.
What were you
I mean, I don't really love Canadian Blizzards, but I love Dairy Queen Blizzards. Okay,
let's clip that and send that to
We will.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
I was going to say,
Charles Adler, and I support Ryan Jesperson for a number of reasons. Primarily because he supports Dairy Queen dilly bars and Dairy Queen Blizzards. Ryan Jesperson is my kind of ice cream eater. Ryan Jesperson's family is my kind of Canadian family. Ryan Jesperson's my guy because he's a Dairy Queen guy.
This is good, yeah.
So am I.
This is really good. Check your
Does
email.
that make up for my trespass?
check your inbox for the e-transfer later today. What were you going to say about one of the world's richest men?
In a related story, Warren Buffett, all these billionaires are at this big billionaire summer camp summit in Sun Valley over the weekend.
Okay.
And his wife Astrid, pictured here if you're watching on YouTube, overheard complaining about $4 cups of coffee that they were forced to pay for at a summer camp for billionaires.
Well, you don't become a billionaire if you're splashing cash.
Warren
all over
Buffett,
the place, right?
famously, frugal, very cheap.
Charles, he reportedly still lives in the same house that they raised.
He bought it for $38,000
Yeah.
like 20 years ago or 28 years
I
ago.
just want to say this because every time Buffett's name comes up, I just want to say this. I know of a number of Americans and some Canadians, but mostly Americans, who don't know diddly squat about finance, the stock market, bonds, interest rates, none of it. All they know is they trust Warren Buffett. And many of them bought Berkshire Hathaway stock over 30 years ago. And they have done absolute gangbusters. People can look it up. So Warren Buffett is a wonderful human being because Warren Buffett has ingratiated himself to just the common man, common woman, common people, told them years ago, trust me, I will make you richer. I may make you really, really rich. I'll certainly make you richer. I'll do more for you than anyone else will. They trusted him, and they go to his convention. Some people call it, Berkshire Woodstock. They have other names for it as well. But every year in Omaha, Nebraska, anybody who's got Berkshire Hathaway stock can go and visit with Warren and Charlie. And I just think it's a wonderful story. And I think if they think that $4 is too much for price of coffee, it's because $4 is too much for a price of coffee. And I agree with Warren. I agree with his wife. And by the way, people ought to know that somewhere around 90% of Warren's billions and billions and billions of dollars, somewhere around 90% is going to be turned over to charity when he passes.
And I agree with you, Charles, but like the average cost of like a Starbucks drink in North America, Canada, is like $4.50 anyways. So, but her argument was, when this went on, was I think she said something in the story, it says, that amounted to, I could buy a pound of coffee for that much. And the person serving it was like, didn't know what to do. But I agree with Charles. It's hard to hate. It's not hard to hate billionaires, but it's really hard to hate Warren Buffett, because you try and you want him to be an asshole. But when a guy's already said that when he passes away, him and his wife are giving 99% of their wealth
Can you imagine
to
being
charity.
Their kid? You're their kid.
I mean, there's nothing bad you can say about him, but he's an asshole for making me feel bad about not being rich.
Okay. Yes. Charles, we actually had a sort of a moment in our marriage. I'll pull the curtain back this week. And my wife informed me that while we did end up buying tickets for the $65 million Lotto Max, that Carrie let me know. I said, what's going to be the first thing that we do when we win? And I already had my answer locked and loaded. It's obviously private air transport to one of the Hawaiian Islands for about 2 months. And then we'll figure out what we're going to do. She said, no, the very first thing that you're going to do, she said, I'm going to get you help, and you're going to start talking to counselors. She said, because she said, I know you and I can't trust you with $65 million. And so let alone $1 billion, there's already questions in our household if I'm capable of dispersing or living with $65 million in the bank. So thankfully we didn't have the winning numbers, so I don't have to deal with it.
Well, this is real simple. You just, just sign a document that she's in charge of, if let's say it's the $65 million, that she's in charge of $64 million of the $65 million.
Let me have one.
$1 million and
thank my friends.
If you're asking me, I personally also trust Carrie.
Yes.
More with $64 million than you.
I would be dead 6 months after winning $65 million. What a 6 months it would be.
No. The things that you would do might be self-destructive and not in the interest of your family, and most important to Johnny and me, not in the interest of this show.
What does that mean?
No, but he's right. He's right. It would not be. There would be a lot of.
I trust Carrie. Carrie's the grown up in the family.
Like Wyatt says to us,
I trust her with the dough.
Wyatt's about to turn 8, right? And so his perspective is a little different. And so I was trying to explain to him how much $65 million is, and you can't really. He said
comprehensible.
I said, for example, we could, like, if we wanted to, I said we could race Lamborghinis, and I said we would just buy the Lamborghinis. And Carrie says, "See?" She says, "See? This is what I'm talking about." So we're not on the same page. But these are not the conversations that average households are having. The real conversations are for a lot of people. You mentioned with the interest rate going up again. That means for a lot of people, again, this happened just in the last few days. All of their variable rates are rising, right? And so for a lot of people, the mortgage payment's going up. For a lot of people, that means the lines of credit are going up. For some people, it means their credit card's going to be going up as well, which in some or many circumstances is maxed out. We saw the troubling numbers just this past week that a lot of people are within $200 on any given moment from being unable to cover their bills on that 2-week cycle. So, I mean, this is a very real conversation. And Chuck, in closing, I wanted to put the same question in front of you that we put in front of your pals, Jody Vance and Linda Steele, on our Friday roundtable a week ago. If you were the federal government, I don't know where you're going to land on that. I don't know how you're going to answer this. With the slated carbon tax increase for July 1st, it went up. It meant that gas is more expensive at the pumps, and there are other implications as well. If you were the PM, or if you were calling the shots, Charles, would you have pressed pause, all things considered, on that bump up, that carbon tax increase on July 1st?
Yes. Sorry if
well,
yes
unanimous.
is a difficult answer for you, but yes, this is a no-brainer. We're going through a period of time where people need a break, and I'd give them a break, and I'd give them a break on the tax that is most identified with the government. And if the other side, if the opposition wants to have a problem with that, I mean, they can have a problem with it. All they do all day long is talk about the carbon tax. I'd give people a furlough on that, a tax holiday, if you will.
Yeah. You can catch Charles Adler every Monday, unless it's a long weekend. Then he's here on Tuesdays on Real Talk. You can subscribe to the Charles Adler podcast, and it doesn't matter where you are in the country. You can also read his column in the Winnipeg Free Press. What's that, out on Wednesdays? Is that right?
It's
or
on
weekly?
Thursdays and Saturdays, and I just want people to know that on Mondays, I do not interview anyone for my podcast because Monday is a sacred day, okay? Monday is Ryan Jesperson's day, and if it weren't for Ryan Jesperson, I wouldn't be overweight because of all of the Dairy Queens that I'm having. If it weren't for Ryan Jesperson, I wouldn't have climbed out of the casket to get back in the public ear and eye. And so Mondays are Ryan's days. I'll do, comments about the price of coffee or the price of Diet Coke at Wendy's, but I don't interview anyone on this sacred day.
Oh, we love you, pal. We'll talk to you again in a week, okay?
Honor, respect. Thank you.
Goes both ways. That's Charles Adler, legendary talk host.
TGIM.
TGIM. Charles Adler. I love this. David on our live chat says if he won the $65 million, he'd buy a lake lot and retire. Says I would build a sanctuary for senior cats. For all the old kitties that don't get adopted, they get to live their lives in the mountains, totally taken care of. He goes on, by the way, to say I'd also have my partner ensuring that I'm spending properly. David says I'm the spender and he's the responsible one. Are you the?
There's always one, right?
How does it? Do I dare drag you into this one? Is there a dynamic in your love life, in your relationship? Is there one spender and one more frugal, prudent?
I think it's flipped. So it used to be me. I was the one who just spend, can't take it when you're gone.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of flipped. But my wife doesn't, my partner's she buys a lot of things, but they're not super expensive. But like every day there's a little Amazon, there's a little something, I get a ding.
But nothing
on my
that's
phone.
like $1,000.
No, but she's definitely buying more stuff than I do now. Now I'm the one who's like, put it in the savings, put it in the savings, put it in the savings. But having said that, I love her, and she's not sending us to the poorhouse.
Yes. Well done. M. Aitken says, I disagree with Adler on the, and by the way, thanks to we really appreciate when you let us know when you disagree with something. Like your praise and your support for this show is so appreciated, but we also love when you let us know when you'd love to hear an alternative viewpoint on something or when you think we're out to lunch on something. And that included my conversation on our most recent Friday Roundtable with Jody and Linda. Both of them, 2 for 2, said they would pause the increase on the carbon tax. Adler makes it 3 for 3. But M.A. Can here says, I disagree. We need to force change on people, and the carbon tax is part of that sort of influence on the behavior. It would be politically difficult. Like on the one hand, it's a win. Everybody loves, Ralph Bucks, Danny Dollars, Mo money with Scott Moe when a government is running in surplus or creates an opportunity for people to, get a one-time payment, whether that's like a grocery incentive or something else. It's $400, $600, whatever it is. People love politically. The numbers show there's evidence that the electorate responds favorably.
Sure.
Obviously, when you give them money. Imagine that.
But kind of
but at the same time, right? If you all of a sudden are like is the tail wagging the dog? Like who's making the calls and how do you decide something like that? If you look the Canadian public in the eye and say we are moving forward with a bold plan for climate action because we believe that the time is not now, the time is almost past. In other words, we're operating on borrowed time. We need to operate now. 1.5 degrees either way, the polar ice caps are melting, yada yada yada. I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just cutting to the chase. If you say we have to act now and then you go but like gas is more expensive and things and groceries, so actually we're going to lay off, we're going to back off, politically that can also be suicidal.
Of course.
Right? Because people that are supporting your government or supporting you as an elected official based on you taking climate action seriously are going to go, what the hell?
100%. And people live in the here and now. I get it. But $400 to $600, and I get it. There's people listening now who are like, I could use $400. I could use $600. But in the grand scheme of the world, Randy said it best. Even if we do monumental change right now, we're not going to see any kind of effect on anything for years and years and years. So maybe it is time to just force things. And I don't want to sound like that. But you know what I mean?
Politicians
we need
will
action.
never use the word force, but they'll say you want to influence people.
We need some action. And if it's $400 you don't get from a rebate or whatever it is, I'll pay the $400 a year to have, your kids.
Yeah.
be able to enjoy the planet, right?
MA follows up on that comment and says, we live on a farm and we're investing in solar. Utilities are killing us. MA, make sure you check out kubyenergy.ca. They're doing a ton of work on the agricultural work that they're doing is really amazing. And positive reflections presented by Kuby's coming up in just a quick second. Seventh Pilot says carbon tax is affecting people's ability to afford to eat. That's a fact. Gary wonders, do you stop investing in your kids' RESP, their education savings plan, knowing that decision will have long-term consequences, right? Yeah. Tracy says, by the way, her husband says if they win the lottery, give them an allowance. Don't show them the money. I could deal with an allowance. Something modest, like
for yourself,
$150,000 a month.
Yeah,
just something modest.
I think you would need an allowance.
You would need an allowance.
You would definitely.
Yeah. Hey, all this talk about Dairy Queen. Obviously, we got to remind you what's going on there right now through these summer months, and Adler said it all. When you go to Dairy Queen, you don't show up for the diet sodas, but you can if you want. They are there.
$3.
But if you $1.79. As far as I know, it's the cheapest. It's the most economically priced soda in Canada at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. But they've also got you covered on all the indulgences, the blizzards, and the DQ cakes. Why buy a DQ cake? I mean, are you celebrating a birthday, or maybe you're heading to a birthday party, an anniversary party? Maybe you're getting set for a K-Days party, or shout out to Central Alberta. Maybe you're celebrating Westerner Days in the next little bit. DQ cakes offer happiness however you want it. You can customize a cake with an image to match your occasion. You can personalize colors and photos and all kinds of stuff. And oftentimes, orders can be picked up within a day, maximum 3 days when you order custom Dairy Queen cakes from the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, or in Sherwood Park at Baseline Road. You make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. If you're in charge of keeping that family budget on track and you want to make sure that your family is also eating healthy at the same time, can we recommend that you circle August 1st on your calendar? That's the next chance. It's 2 weeks from now that you're going to be able to save 15% off a grocery purchase of $75 or more. From the Friesen Brothers, there's 16 locations across the province of Alberta, and every month they're introducing their new Family Essentials Easy Family Meal Solutions. This is in their Family Essentials flyer, which you can check out at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com. Simple but really interesting recipes that can be made using products featured in the Family Essentials flyer, including awesome barbecue tips. You can check them out again online or visit them in person. 16 different Alberta communities. Friesen Brothers is Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Also wanted to remind you that, we know it's been a while. We were gone for a week. Johnny and I couldn't wait to get back. Number one, because we know you got a lot of steam you got to blow off. There's a lot of angst out there. It feels good to let it out, right? That's Trash Talk every Friday right here on the show, presented by Local Environmental Services. Some people say that it's only garbage, but not to local. They believe that communities deserve better. So if you're a decision maker in Alberta or Saskatchewan, that could be your own small business. Maybe you got a shoe store. Maybe you got a small ma and pa restaurant. Maybe you're making decisions for a big facility like West Edmonton Mall. Or perhaps you're working for a municipality. If you're in charge of community services like garbage and recycling, you owe it to yourself and your bottom line to get in touch with Local Environmental Services. We can virtually guarantee you'll pay more and you'll be keeping it local. You can find them online at localenvironmental.ca. Every Monday, or the first episode of every week, our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. Again, you can get your free solar quote today, free at kubyenergy.ca. They provide a moment for us, an opportunity to press pause on all the negative news and to fill our buckets. It's a weekly exercise we call Positive Reflections. And Johnny and I both loved this story, although it starts with a bit of a gut punch. This is a fellow by the name of TJ Lyles, and he took his 8-year-old son Gabe out for a quick shopping trip down in the States in Connecticut to Target. And this is when a group of strangers approached him. By the way, Gabe, the little guy, he has bilateral hearing loss. He wears hearing aids, and they asked him if he wanted to take part in a fill a cart challenge. So they were going to blindfold him, and then they were going to give him 30 seconds to fill a shopping cart with items, and then whatever he could get in that 30 seconds, he got to keep it. And they said it was for their YouTube channel. They actually lied. They said that they were affiliated with like the biggest YouTuber of all time, Mr. Beast.
Oh.
Everybody knows Mr. Beast, whose videos get like 150 million views. I think we're just behind him on the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, so long story short, you know what these three jerks did?
What?
They left 8-year-old Gabe blindfolded, scrambling, filling a cart, and took off laughing. They filmed it. They posted it to social media, actually, but it was a prank. They said it was a prank. They're pranking a disabled 8-year-old.
What the?
Like, does it get... I know, but here's the positive. Like, you're going, this should be trash talk, not positive reflections, right? But here's the deal. A whole bunch of people heard about this, and they said, Like, even the Target employees in the house, and they're going, wait a second. They said, number one, first of all, this contest was not authorized. It has nothing to do with us. But number two, they said, who targets, what kind of sick individuals target kids with special needs? And so you know what a whole bunch of people did? A whole bunch of people got together, including their local commission for persons with disabilities. They held an emergency vote, and they were able to allocate some funds so Gabe could have a legit shopping spree at Target.
Nice.
They made it possible. They said, despite the unfortunate circumstances, everybody came together and said the town of Southington is all about good news and positive outcomes. And so after this story aired on local news, they had a huge outpouring of support. They said, we're glad that this ended this way for Gabe. We wanted to reinforce there are good people out there, and we hope that this inspires people to do nice things for others. So a positive outcome to a pretty lousy start. But that's why we wanted to present it here as a reminder that there are people out there that when they sense the slightest ripple in the universe, when they sense that something's wrong, they snap into action to make it right. And that includes this circumstance. If you've experienced something like this, or maybe you've played a part in making someone's day, did somebody make yours? Tell us about it. Send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com with positive reflections in the subject line, and you could be featured in an upcoming episode of Real Talk. Coming up on the show tomorrow, we're looking forward to checking in with the storm chaser who filmed that remarkable video of the Lacombe tornado. You remember that? Absolutely. The Didsbury tornado, rather. You remember this? The one that was, it had the entire nation's attention. This guy was right there in the mix. Aaron Jajak's going to join us to take us through his remarkable experience. Thanks for being a friend of Real Talk. Thanks for telling your friends about this episode and the others. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for joining us right here again tomorrow.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson.